There's one cruise mistake that I see all the time that frustrates me more than any other. I see people making this mistake every few days, and it's such an easy one to avoid. I don't mean to be overly dramatic, but there are people who have lost their lives who may not have died if they didn't make this cruise mistake. And I don't want you to be in the same situation. I want you to go and have a fantastic cruise. One person who was in that situation was a man called Bruce. I have changed a lot of the names in this video because I didn't know how much these people would want their names associated with their stories on the internet, but Bruce's story was all over the news, so I think it would be a bit strange if I changed his name. Bruce was taking a cruise in 2019 on board a Carnival cruise ship when he started to experience some stroke-like symptoms. He was cruising in the Bahamas at the time, and I'm sure you can agree this is everybody's worst nightmare. Bruce's wife said that she noticed that his face was drooping on one side and he was kind of tensing up. She did the best thing you can do and she took him to the medical centre on board the cruise ship. All cruise ships have medical centres, they have doctors, they have nurses, they have medicines. They're very well equipped, but there definitely is a limit on what you can do on a cruise ship. The medical centre confirmed that Bruce had suffered a stroke. The idea really of the onboard medical centre is to kind of fix you up and move you on to a hospital. It's not designed to keep people in there long term. Carnival recommended to Bruce and his wife that he would be transported to a hospital on land, and the closest at the time was Freeport in the Bahamas, so Bruce and his wife got on a small boat and they were transported to the hospital. There must have been a brief moment of relief, at least for Bruce's wife, knowing that he was in a hospital, but it quickly became apparent that the hospital didn't have everything that they needed to treat him. There had been a huge, I think Category 5 hurricane in the Bahamas earlier in the year, Hurricane Dorian, and the Bahamas were struggling. Bruce and his wife didn't have travel insurance and they didn't have the funds available to get him back to the US, to get him to a different hospital in the Bahamas. His options were pretty limited at that time, but it would probably be to either go to a bigger hospital in a place like Nassau or back to the US for treatment. Bruce's wife did set up a GoFundMe and people donated to raise the funds to get him back to the US, but with a service like GoFundMe, it takes a few days to get the money out. They have to check it's not money laundering and various other things, and with a stroke, time really is critical. They didn't have the time to wait for that. Absolutely amazingly, an anonymous donor donated $20,000 to get Bruce and his wife back to the US, which is absolutely amazing, but do not make any of your plans on the assumption that you will have an anonymous donor who will send you vast amounts of money, because I don't think that's going to work. Bruce unfortunately did pass away when he got back to the US, and who knows how different that story could have been if he had got back to the US sooner. Bruce was able to donate some of his organs though, so he has gone on to save multiple other people's lives. A bit of a side note, but if you're not already on the organ donor register, please consider joining it. The way I personally see it is that either your organs are eaten by maggots or they could save multiple people's lives, so if you don't have any reason to not be on the list, please join it. You might be thinking to yourself, oh, okay, so the problem is not getting travel insurance. I have travel insurance, don't worry, I will be fine. Well, just because you have travel insurance, and even if you have cruise-specific travel insurance, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're covered. Many people have found themselves in bad situations when they thought that they would be covered by travel insurance, but they actually weren't, one of which is Susan. I have changed Susan's name. In 2018, Susan was taking a princess cruise to Mexico. She was 67 at the time and she did have some travel insurance. She suffered a heart attack on board. She was taken to a hospital in Mexico, but the cost of getting evacuated back to the UK was around $86,000, which is around £62,000. I don't know about you, but I don't, and I'm sure most people don't have a spare £62,000 sitting around. She did have travel insurance through her bank. This is something that quite a lot of banks offer. My bank offers this, but the thing is that travel insurance provided through your bank often doesn't include any pre-existing medical conditions. Because it's such a broad kind of blanket policy, they just say that if you have any medical conditions at all, you are not covered. She did have a conversation with the bank before the cruise, and the bank said to her that she would not be covered by this policy because she did have pre-existing medical conditions. They actually sent her to another place where she could get cover, but she decided not to. Maybe she forgot, maybe she just decided that she wouldn't need it, but that decision did not pay off. For the cost of the travel insurance, she ended up paying so much more in medical expenses. A lot of cruise lines at the minute are making it so that you have to show proof of travel insurance before you get on the cruise, but the cruise line isn't going to know if that policy actually covers you due to something like pre-existing medical conditions, so it's very much on you as the cruiser to make sure that you are covered before you step on that cruise. Ideally, as soon as you book the cruise, pay for your travel insurance because it will cover you for things like cancellation, but at least before you get on the cruise, do not step on the cruise without the insurance. Actually, getting the travel insurance is pretty easy. I don't think that is the problem point for most people. I have recommendations for the UK and the US for comparison websites that I use. Using comparison websites means that you just have to enter your details once and it will give you, 30 different policies that will cover you, and you can compare them and you can pick the one that works for you. So much easier than typing in your details over and over again, and I doubt anybody would do that as many times as the comparison websites can just do automatically. I was going to say that I'm pretty convinced that you can get a travel insurance quote in less than a minute, but I'm sure you can do it in less than 20 seconds. If I just do it really quickly, come onto cruise. Let's pretend that this costs $3,000. Where are we going? Let's go to the Bahamas because that's the top of the alphabet. We are going tomorrow. We're coming back in a week. There's one of us. I'm 27. Let's pretend that we're from Alabama. Why not? We're from Alabama and we're going to pay for it today. And it does all of the hard work, it comes up with it, the full guide is on my website, and boosh. Back to Susan now, and she did manage to fly back to the UK, but she had to pay for the medical care and pay for the medical evacuation. If she had bought another travel insurance policy that covered her pre-existing condition, she would have saved a lot of money, and this happens to so many people, so many more than you can imagine. I know so many people who have been caught out, not quite in such a bad way, but I know a lot of people that have been caught out by this. I've spent the last 6 years working in insurance, and it is the strangest industry to be in. Basically what insurance is you're saying to the company, I bet something bad will happen to me on this cruise, and the company is saying, nah, I don't think it will. That's basically what insurance is. It's worth remembering that even though travel insurance policies do cover you for medical expenses, for getting you back to your home country, they also cover a lot of smaller things that you're probably more likely to claim for. If you're on a cruise and you lose your passport, maybe your bag gets lost. If you're unwell and you're confined to your cabin, some travel insurers will give you a cash bonus per day, and some will do the same thing if you miss excursions. Of course, nobody wants to be confined to their cabin on the cruise unwell, but if that does happen to you, it can be a nice bonus if somebody says to you, you can have, £100 a day or something like that. Not declaring pre-existing medical conditions is just one of the things that can invalidate your policy, but it probably is the most common. If you're in the UK and you have pre-existing medical conditions, it's pretty easy. I would recommend that you use a specialist pre-existing medical condition insurance company, one like All Clear. Basically what you do is you add your conditions, and the quotes that come back to you are based on you having told them about that condition. So anyone you book there, you've told them and it will be fine. It's a bit more confusing in the US, and I did spend a lot of time yesterday talking to a US travel insurance company. Basically what you're going to want to do is, if you're booking travel insurance and you have pre-existing medical conditions, if you book it within a couple of weeks of booking the cruise, you can look for something which is called a look back waiver. Shout out to Brandon at RD who spent ages trying to explain this to me. It's pretty different in the US versus the rest of the world as far as I can tell. The differences in the way that pre-existing medical conditions are treated may explain why US policies tend to be a lot more expensive than UK or Australian policies. I can get a worldwide travel insurance policy that covers cruises for about £60. Of course, if you are older, if you have more medical conditions, that's going to be more expensive. But even the kind of cheapest policies that you can get from the US, if you're doing a week in the Bahamas, that can be $200, $300, $400 per person. It's just more expensive. I don't know why. Sorry, Americans. My gran is 94. She is still cruising, but she would never cruise without travel insurance, even though her premiums are quite a bit higher because she is 94. If you're in doubt, think to yourself, what would Emma's gran do? And Emma's gran would get the travel insurance. Again, there's a lot more information about this in my full guide. Now that you've learned one thing that I think is definitely worth spending your money on, check out this video that goes through the things that I've spent money on in the past, but I wouldn't spend money on again.